Hello and welcome to the fourth part of the VR lectures we have for the network of Resonance Cinema, which is a network of movie theaters. And this is one of the kind of should be workshops, but it's a time of Corona. We have a quarantine. So what we do what we can with the online streaming. And in the previous parts, we have made an introduction into VR technologies, an introduction into VR cinema and VR social spaces. And also we talked, in the third part, we talked more about VR games. And kind of in all of the parts, even in VR cinema, there is a common theme with how we represent ourselves in VR space. And we do that mostly with a virtual avatar. Now, we had virtual avatars, I mean, we know them for a long time, especially in multiplayer video games like World of Warcraft, or today what has been the most popular game right now, Fortnite. We represent ourselves in this virtual space with the avatars that we can customize ourselves, and that represents us in this world. And okay, just a moment. Let me start my presentation. So, as I said, this is the fourth part, and we will talk more about virtual identity. Then we talk also how they are used today in a more popular terms with virtual idols. And now in the last year, with the exploding popularity of virtual VTubers, or let's say virtual YouTubers. And then we'll talk more about the kind of benefits, why people change into that, and we'll talk more about technology. How can you use yourself? It's actually a lot of different ranges. You can use expensive gear, of course, for the more tracking options, but you can also use a webcam, which is actually used by most of the popular examples. So we have been using, so the term of virtual identity is quite broad. We use it in everyday use when we even when we communicate with an email. We are represented, of course, by the email address, but by text. And then this extends to social media. What kind of image do we present ourselves there? You could say that this is also how we are presented online when you Google yourself. So you Google your name. What pops up? It's a kind of, you would say, a first impression. Especially this is used by employers to scout potential employees, or when you're dating, you want to check out people even before they tell you the number. So because especially now that virtual dating is also quite popular for obvious reasons, and this all culminates into a virtual identity that is presented, and you can control it yourself. Especially this is seen with Instagram, for example, where what your visual representation is, you can, of course, control it and use it for your own personal brand. But even in social spaces, the way which groups you join, what likes you make, for example, will be represented in your profile. So in that way, it is a kind of not your personal identity, but more a virtual one that you can control. And so this was then one of the examples from World of Warcraft. They were quite specified, of course, by the engine, by the game. You had a few options, but if you played this game, you would notice that a lot of the kind of your representation was built on what kind of pieces of equipment you had on your avatar. That was actually quite a status symbol because some of them were harder to get, and that played a major motivational role for the playing of the game, how you represent it today. And it used to be that you could get this special gear, for example, in this specific game, only by competing and finishing tough collaborative quests. But today they changed it in a way that you want to stylize yourself, and you can get the pieces so it became kind of a fashion also. So you can scout older areas to get the pieces you need the way you want to style it yourselves. And today this is an example of Fortnite. Each season there will be different kind of cosmetic changes, and in modern games this became also a big drive for monetization. For example, the games are free. You can play the games for free, but the major way how the companies get the revenue, get the money to develop the game is through let's say microtransaction, but it's more about cosmetics. Another game is that use that a lot and is very successful is League of Legends, that has been now going on for 10 years. And you can see that the way, so people choose a cosmetic they want, they buy it, the one they like, and that's how they can differentiate themselves in these virtual spaces. But this does not extend only to games, because especially in how we represent in chat, in these social spaces, we use, for example, something like a Bitmoji, and it's a way to kind of create a digital likeness of yourself, of course, much more stylized. And I'm sure you're familiar with the Bitmoji examples. Another one with so we now have much more powerful smartphones. Especially Apple has been driving the technology of depth perception, AR, augmented reality on phones. So you can now change kind of from 2D aspect to the 3D world. And this is an example of an app that uses the kind of a filter, you would say Snapchat or Snapchat AR filter, or Instagram, Facebook AR filter, and then creates kind of your stylized representation as a virtual character, which of course is also animated by your face. And we will see more examples of how to animate those characters in real life streams later on. And now we go into more how companies have been using these kind of avatars for brand representation. One example as an Instagram virtual model is Lil Miquela. If you have never seen it before, you might actually passed it by and not even realized it's a virtual model. Of course, when you look closely, you can see the uncanny valley of the character. But brands have been using these kind of avatars, of course, in a way because they are much easier to control in terms of because the likeness, the model, the likeness, the personality is controlled by the brand. And later on, we will also talk about the distinction. For example, even for prospective virtual YouTubers, what is important when you are, what is important about the kind of personal brand when you are engaging in this kind of virtual avatars. These are another examples of Instagram avatars, or I should probably say personas at this point. And as you can see, they're using for Instagram, they're using a much more realistic models, and of course, you always go into the uncanny valley. But if Instagram is let's say so filtered and controlled in a visual aspect, then you probably actually come much closer to the you kind of make the virtual and the real kind of modified pictures much more indistinguishable between each other. And this was one of the most popular examples in recent years in terms of, again, brand, because another one is Hatsune Miku as a virtual idol. And we make a distinction between virtual idols and virtual YouTubers. I mean, there is basically that virtual YouTubers are mainly used for streaming or as a personalities on YouTube, which Kizuna Ai started as, and now it became very popular, and it still has over 4 million subscribers on YouTube. But there is a problem when you go into this kind of brand area, because the person, for example, we'll see here, the character itself is controlled by motion capture software and hardware, and there is a person behind it, and it's all real time. When communicating or making videos, especially in streaming, can be done in real time. But the person behind has anonymity. But when you are in, so for example, when the company controls the brand, then it's kind of tricky, because multiple people can play the character. But what you cannot really fake or control are the body movements or body interaction, body communication of the person behind it. And a lot of it actually comes out becomes more important as a character of this kind of avatar or personality. So the character itself, the character of the person, the interactions, the voice becomes much more important than visual looks, of course. And so if you make a distinction between just virtual idols which can be represented in any mediums, VTubers are, let's say, a subsection that deal mostly with live streaming that has become a much more popular in the last years. A lot of people are basically using it as a sort of reality television, especially if the thematics are similar. For example, the games played there. So if a person on Twitch, for example, plays the same game, it kind of creates a community with all other people that are watching, and you are much more immersed or engaged in this kind of world. So, for example, here, let just me show you how it looks like. And this is a clip from one of the popular brand called HoloLive. Which is kind of an idol agency that designs characters, or actually works similar as a Japanese idol group, if you're ever familiar with. So let's just, yes. So this was an example of kind of Japanese style idol agency with live streaming. And before I go to Angelica, let me just say that there were many more agencies coming up with the kind of virtual idol idea, and these are mostly talents brought from before that applied to be represented as a virtual idol. So these are actual people behind the avatars. Because as I said, you can, so the company can control the kind of visual and the visual representation and the name of the character, but the person behind it gives it character. And it's not often, except for Kizuna Ai, that the character itself can be transferable to another person, but it does happen. So now we saw the example before, which are much more 2D examples. We'll go into technical detail later on, but here are the example of a much more 3D version from Angelica. And this is all done real time. For example, these are not rendered things. These are all characters controlled by a mocap rig in real time. And you can, of course, use it as a streaming. All right, let's go to another example. And here, CodeMiko is also one recent example, very popular. I chose this video specifically just to showcase kind of the technology behind it. So you see her character. This is CodeMiko character. She created kind of virtual room, a virtual streamer room. And here is the example of how the technology. So what she has here is the Xsense mocap suit, and she uses a mobile phone to capture the face. Just a quick overview. So you can see how it's done real time.
I disconnected it. The son is watching it now. He was watching a clip. He may or may.
Yes, we'll talk about technology a little bit later on, and let's check the benefits first. And the benefits themselves are, you can think of it as, of course, you kind of differentiate between your visual representation, like I'm doing right now from the camera. But later on, if I add my character to the stream, you can see I can represent myself in this kind of character. I can create a persona. It's much more easier when you're not kind of bound by one visual representation. You can create a persona, and that helps with, especially in growing up. It helps with playing with different aspects of your personality. Maybe sometimes personality that you, I guess, won't show in public, or in a group of colleagues, because you are maintaining a certain image, right? But you have maybe a different group of friends, a different group of different group of interest groups that you can then open up a different path of your personality. And then specifically, a lot of people nowadays, because of Corona, have started doing this with a virtual character representation, which can then, of course, open or role play a different side of them. And a lot of them have been starting using this as a sort of brand. They have started live streaming, and this kind of opened up like one of the specific differences that is interesting to me is it brings up the character of the person, kind of much more, let's say, as a much more a real character, right? Because if you imagine, and that is a little bit more philosophical, but if you imagine that when you represent yourself as with your visual that everyone can recognize you, you would probably think twice on what to say, which aspect to show, so people don't get confused or maybe offended, or in a way that you're thinking, you're much more careful on how you represent yourself. But then when you have a character, you can deliberately choose, like I said before, with a role play aspect, you can choose a specific personality which is closer to you, or actually much more real to you personally. And this is specifically going to the kind of aspect where, when we are free from kind of bounds of when we are free to express ourselves without fear of kind of negative aspect, or free to explore, which anonymity brings in itself. Slavoj Žižek, in his book The Reality of Virtual, is proposing that this reality, or actually virtual reality, is much more real to the people than let's say our representation in reality itself. So he says he's not interested in virtual reality as a technology, but what makes what brings out what the virtual brings from the people. So in his opinion, the people who are representing ourselves, so basically he's saying that the avatars that people choose to represent themselves virtually are much more real representations of those people than they would present in real life, as you would meet them on the street, for example. So of course, if you play a long time, or in a longer, but there are also situations when you're deliberately role playing. So maybe you are role playing an evil character in the game, just to kind of explore it. But you can imagine that even then you probably could not play it for a long time, because you would disconnect yourself from this kind of persona, because it would not feel real to you. Yes, so the technology part, probably what a lot of you are most interested for. Let me just check. And this is also for all of you. If you have any questions, just write them down in chat, and we will talk. We will go back to in the Q&A section. Just let me check. Okay. For some reason, just let me check. For some reason, I don't see the comments yet. All right. So technology. It's actually, let me just first say about how to create those kind of avatars yourself. This is the first example that became very useful specifically for virtual reality, when you you want to showcase yourself as an avatar in these virtual worlds. This specific example is a company, Ready Player Me, a kind of association with the movie Ready Player One. And it has, so this is a kind of character generation, or in this case avatar generation, that you can very quickly create your avatar just by posting your picture, and then by analyzing your picture with an algorithm, it then detects which kind of assets would most be useful or mostly represent you. So we have here one example, and this is still made with the pre-made assets, in general as a character. So it's probably a lot of different assets that are combined together to generate this kind of avatar. Another one then is what you have seen for most of the examples from VTubing, is called Live 2D from the company Cubism. I have tried this program. It's quite complicated. Professionals complicated. It takes a lot of work. But in a way, let me see what I have on the next slide. So you can see here the example of what the program does. So the program is taking the program is taking the program is taking your camera or your face gestures from the camera, and it animates a 2D character. And all of these kind of little animations that are then controlled by the webcam have to be kind of like the maximum and minimum position have to be done beforehand. And you can imagine if you have a complex character, that would take a lot of different small animations. So if in this picture we see, so it would made in a lot of different layers, and you would also have to account that you kind of move your head left and right. So you would probably you would make separate layers for the eyes. You would make transitions between closing eyes, opening eyes, transition between moving your hair. So you mostly would have, for example, 3 layers of hair, one in front, middle, and back. And you would use then the parallax movement, how the hair moves. For example, if the back hair would move more than the front hair when you're moving your head left and right. And that would create the illusion that the character is actually 2D. But this is still all a 2D character, just animated in a way that creates an illusion of movement. For example, you can see that the front hair is kind of one layer and the back hair is another layer. Another program that is very useful to create anime style 3D characters is called Viroid. Became very popular because it gives you an option to modify a kind of base character, create hair, make color, create different textures. Here I have a Japanese screenshot, but don't worry, it's also available in English. And it's a program that it runs kind of in Unity, but it is basically a program that you can modify and then export the character. And I'll show you a little bit later on how it looks in the program. You can control it just with a webcam, and if you want to, you also use the motion of hands. You can use the lip controller or lip motion controller, which is kind of inexpensive at $80, but very useful overall. And later on, you can go much more professional, like we saw in the CodeMiko example. Here we have an example from Cinematography Database YouTube channel, and he has very useful virtual production blogs. And here he will show the example of cow. So this is let's say you have a different brand of mocap suit that he has on, and on the bottom right you can see the real-time character animation. So this is the equipment used in I mean, you probably ask yourself where are the kind of dots or the white dots that are used in kind of really Hollywood style studios. It's a different technology. This one uses kind of sensors on the suit itself, so you don't need an expensive studio setup with cameras that track these white dots on a suit. So it actually becomes much more cheaper. And the technology itself is similar to technology what we have in the smartphones, because it has positional tracking, all the different combination of sensors that combined basically track that specific dot in space. And when connected together on a skeleton, then you can control a 3D character. And now let me show you a little bit of a future, which was the technology Unreal announced a week ago, which is a meta-human kind of add-on for Unreal. What you see here is also a character generator. So we went from Ready Player Me, a kind of more general, more really quick and easy character generation. Sorry, to this one, which is it's also a character generation. So you can modify different aspects. You can change. So you can basically a lot of sliders if you're familiar with character generations in games, where you can create your own character or avatar in the game. This is just a much more advanced version, and it comes already with, as you can see here, it comes already with all the animation controls, the skeleton rig, which you can then quickly start controlling with these mocap suits, for example. And just to give you an example, the suit we saw just before in a cinematography database example costs around $2,500. Of course, they are much more expensive. For example, Xsense is a brand, or they are longer on the market, and they used to be a market leader, probably still now. The suits are much more expensive, but there are more and more cheaper options coming to the market. So it basically, in a way, becoming much more available. Especially when you're doing production for kind of unique experiences.
Motion capture, allowing
so
deformations.
And what you see here, kind of the face capture is being done. This I guess I did mention before with CodeMiko. The face animation is done by a specific software which uses an iPhone. So iPhones have what's called a true depth camera as a front camera. They also have a LiDAR sensor right now, but that one is more for scanning. But the true depth camera on an iPhone kind of creates a depth map of your face, which is useful for AR kind of filters. But also for then mocap of the face. Of course, that can be done with just a normal camera by tracking points. but the true depth camera is much more precise. It's much more, you can control much more, many more points on the face. So it's much more realistic because of that. So basically, in the modern studios, you would see kind of people with, you know, it used to be a helmet with a camera in front, and you would have dots on your face that would track all the different relations between the dots, and therefore animating the face. But now you just have an iPhone. That's the benefit. I mean, you can use it to call. Probably not very good if someone calls you at the moment you're tracking your face, but of course you can always put the SIM out and use it just as a face controller. So let me go back, and next one. So that is a general. Yes, next. So that was a general overview of a kind of area of virtual avatars. Now we are open for question. Just let me check something. I just. Yeah, probably I do have sound, so that was not a problem. But if you have any questions, just put them up on a live chat, and I will read them out. But otherwise, I will show you an example of let me check here. So I will show you an example of VRoid or VRoid studio. So I have my own character here. You have a couple of pre-made characters, and let me check so I can bring my own character this time. Yes, I was reminded there was no sound. I'm sorry for that. It's a different camera setup. But what you have seen here, I made a little bit of representation. What this kind of Viroid can do. We went from the face editor, which is mostly done with sliders, hair editor, when you can add hair with the bone settings. You can again modify the body with sliders, and most of the customization of the character is done by modifying the textures. You have seen me deleting the kind of to create the shorts, and we played with lightning in the general settings, and in the last part we can export our character. So we use the VRM model setting, and VRM file type is used a lot for social VR spaces. For example, if you want to create your character to be used in VR chat, you can use Viroid to create anime style. A lot of course, you can create, if you know 3D modeling, you can use any 3D creation software. Blender is one of the popular ones, but then you have to know how to rig the character yourself. So Viroid has been useful for kind of experimenting in this kind of style. That concludes our quick overview of the technology, the styles, creation types for the virtual avatars. And let me go back to yes. So this concludes. Let me just check if you have any questions. Okay. Otherwise, thank you a lot. If you find the general information useful, you can still. There's been a lot of resources online. Just search by you can search by VTube technology, and it has been quite a boom this past year. That concludes our presentation for today. Thank you a lot for listening, for today and future participants, and we hope we next time, or as soon. I'm being optimistic that we can make the workshop with Resonance Cinema program when the quarantine is over.